Welcome back. Still tuned in to News and Views with myself, Salailo Makwidiri. We now turn our attention to one of the most harrowing and urgent stories of the week, a shocking example of the risks journalists face in conflict zones, especially in Gaza at the moment. On the 10th of August 2025, an Israeli airstrike struck a tent used by journalists just outside Al Shifa Hospital in Gaza City. Among the dead were Al Jazeera's Anas Al Sharif, Mohammed Khirich, Ibrahim Zahir, and Mohammed Nofal. Plus freelance journalist Muamin Aliwa. Israeli forces confirmed targeting Al Sharif, labeling them as Hamas operatives. An accusation Al Jazeera and international press freedom bodies have vehemently denied. The strike has sparked global outrage, with press watchdogs calling it a deliberate attempt to silence independent reporting. And to help us unpack the danger, the propaganda, and what this ultimately means for press freedom in Gaza, I'm joined now by Al Jazeera journalist Nour Odeh. Nour, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Salam Media. Really appreciate you giving us your time this morning.
Thank you for having me. Assalamu alaikum.
Walaikum salam. I think first and foremost, you know, there's been a lot of reactions when it comes to this attack and how it has unfolded. From your own point of view, we are at a very familiar place where there's a continued targeting of journalists in Gaza by the Israeli forces. This one in particular, this attack in particular, how is it? How and why is it so significant in the greater scheme of things?
Well, first of all, as you said, this is not the first attack on Al Jazeera journalists. We have lost several of our colleagues in the past 22 months in Gaza, and of course, before that, we also lost our dear colleague, my dear friend Shireen Abu Akleh in Jenin in the occupied West Bank to the bullet of an Israeli soldier as well. The last attack, the attack of 10 August, was shocking and really quite. It put us at a crossroad. First of all, because it assassinated the entire crew of Al Jazeera in Gaza City, and of course, as your listeners know, Gaza is there is no freedom of movement at the moment in Gaza. So those who are able to still operate in Gaza City to inform the world about what is going on ahead of Israel's planned re-invasion of the city are it. All right. The journalists who are working in the south can't simply hop on a car and drive up to Gaza City or northern Gaza. Israel took out an entire office, an entire bureau of Al Jazeera Arabic. Of course, with the prominent Anas Sharif, but there was also his colleague Muhammad Iqriqa, the cameraman, the assistants, the driver. This was a journalist tent at the gate of Al Shifa Hospital, known to all. The function of it, known to all. It was purely journalistic. It was a message from Israel, not just to Al Jazeera, but also to every other journalist working in Gaza City right now. Israel wants people to feel fear, to flee Gaza, to not be present, so that they do not tell the world what will be happening when the tanks roll in again on what remains of the neighborhoods of Gaza City. That is really the hair-raising component of all of this, not just the crime, not just the slaughter of journalists, but what it is intended to do, how it is intended to silence everybody else, to obscure what will come next. That is, I think, what should concern us all. Of course, consequently, the safety of all other journalists remaining in Gaza City and the rest of the Gaza Strip, because they are all walking with a target on their back.
And I think that's the most scary part. From what you're gathering, from your colleagues on the ground in newsrooms in Gaza, even if I think even saying newsrooms is stretching it, because we know the circumstances that our colleagues in Gaza are working under. What are you gathering from the reporters, from the cameramen and women? Are they deterred by this? Is there a sense of fear, or are they becoming even more determined to document the truth?
Well, of course, there is fear. They wouldn't be human if they didn't have fear. Look, I speak to my friends and colleagues in Gaza on a daily basis. I worked there for many years, and uh, um, I know a lot. I have a lot of dear friends on the ground working since day one of this unfolding genocide. The fear is very real, as it should be, and a lot of our friends no longer sleep where their families are for fear that their families would come in harm's way if they're targeted. A lot of people fear being around journalists, especially at night, for fear that they may lose their lives in a targeted attack like the one we saw on 10 August. But there are also very few choices. Journalists understand, especially in Gaza, that they have an awesome responsibility to tell the truth, to expose what is happening. They are the eyes of the world, and they are the voice of the people in Gaza. So there are very few options as to what can happen. What can these journalists do? They cannot abandon the story. They cannot abandon their story now. As the genocide continues to unfold, as the starvation continues to claim more and more lives of children, of men, of women, of the elderly. So there is a sense of duty, of determination to keep going, and understanding that without telling the story, things could be much worse than they already are, and they're already cataclysmic, they're already catastrophic, and Israel is already acting with impunity. But imagine how much worse it would be if there were no cameras on, if the
Mm.
world didn't know what was happening.
No, most definitely. And I want to touch on something which is very important. And maybe you can give me your perspective on it. The ultimate end goal here of the Israeli regime, what could it be? We already see international media being barred from Gaza. And now we're seeing this systematic, deliberate targeting of journalists. Is the end goal to make sure that no news gets out of Gaza, that the world doesn't know the truth about some of the atrocities which the people of Gaza are being subjected to, or the news to be in the hands of the Israeli propaganda machine, to have them tell the story from their own perspective?
I think it's both. First of all, let's agree that the ultimate goal of Israel, as it has been pronounced by Israeli ministers, is to completely take over Gaza, to turn it into dust, into a city of tents, and to expel the population. That is the announced, professed goal of the Israeli government, and we've heard it from ministers in Israel repeatedly. As far as blocking journalists is controlled, this genocide has been a war on the truth from the beginning. And let's remember that Israel doubted the number of Palestinian casualties, cast doubt on how Palestinian victims are counted. They cast doubt on whether there is starvation right now or not. And all of that is intended to water down the truth, to waste time and energy arguing about facts that everybody understands are happening, in order to gain time for more genocide, to gain time to advance the agenda of dispossession. That is really the tactic, to play cat and mouse with international journalists. We're going to allow you in now with the Israeli soldiers so that you can only see and report what we allow you to see and report. And I would urge my colleagues not to entertain that kind of reporting, not to entertain that kind of access, if you will, to Gaza. The story of Gaza must be told through the eyes of the people living the genocide, and not through the perspective allowed by the Israeli soldiers and the Israeli army accused of committing that genocide. So that is really why we are at where we're at, where international journalists are not allowed, and where Palestinian journalists who have done a phenomenal job on the ground informing the world are maligned and accused without foundation, without any evidence of belonging to armed groups, of not being journalists.
One last question before I let you go, Nour. From the global media community's perspective, what should be the response at this current moment? And is there enough outcry or action on behalf of Gaza's journalists?
Well, look, there should be a lot more outcry. There should be a lot more indignation because let me tell you, allowing Israel to get away with this, 238 Palestinian journalists have been killed, murdered by Israel for in the past 22 months. None of them have had any justice. Israel has not faced consequences, and quite frankly, in many Western media outlets, it has faced not just no accountability. It has been helped, aided, and abetted by journalists who parrot Israeli talking points. So there's a lot that can be done by responsible media to expose what is happening, to hold Israel accountable, to ask the tough questions. This is what we're here for. That is our job, to ask the tough questions, to speak truth to power, to not allow those committing crimes to normalize those crimes, because now it's Palestinian journalists who are being killed. But once this crime is normalized, once the impunity with which they're committed is normalized, then it is fair game. Journalists everywhere will be fair game, and that is not a situation anybody wants to have anywhere in the world. More Palestinian journalists have been killed since the onset of this genocide than all of the journalists killed since World War II. Let's just stop for a minute and think about that number. This is unprecedented, and we must not allow Israel to get away with it because it poses a danger to all journalists everywhere in the world.
Well, there you have it. Nour, thank you so much for giving us your time. Really, really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
There you go. That was Nour Odeh, Al Jazeera journalist, speaking from the heart, and I think from a place of immense loss. These are her colleagues that are being targeted in the deadliest conflict for journalists in modern history. I think her mentioning the fact that there are more journalists that have been killed in Gaza than in World War II. I think it puts it into perspective. Because the killing of media workers isn't just a simple tragedy, it is a threat to truth itself. When journalists are silenced, the world loses its eyes and its ears in places where accountability matters most. Because just imagine if there were no journalists in Gaza at the current moment. The situation is already bad, but just imagine if there was no cameras capturing, just bringing a sliver of shame to this Israeli regime. I know things are bad, but imagine if there were no cameras, if there were no journalists, what the situation could have been like. Going to take a quick break. When we come back, News and Views continues after this.